Fun fact, the waxing scene in 40-year-old version was based on his ass. Adam Carolla.
Yeah, get it on. Got to get it on. No choice but to get it on. Mandate. Get it on. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for telling a friend. We love that about you, right, Gina Grad?
That's right.
Handball, Bryan.
Great.
All right. Well, the great Judd Apatow will join us in the next period, but we got March Madness and then all sorts of thoughts. And first, a quick follow-up in the column of I know nothing, so I know everything department. And why we thought the computer was going to solve everything. It is not so. I cannot tell you how many times I've said to people who were on a computer, and I'm standing on the other side of the computer going, that can't be right. That can't be right. And they're going, oh, that's what it says. I just Googled it. That's what it says. And I'm going, I don't know anything, but that's not right. You know what I mean? It's my... You know, it's like, oh, surf and turf for $4. You know what I mean? It's like, you got to go, it's not right.
That's right.
And I wonder if the computer is weakening that gene in people because they're so used to just, it's like the calculator fucked up people's ability to do math in their head. Yeah. This is doing a life math. So
I don't know how to get home anymore without my GPS.
Yes.
And I should be able to.
Does anyone remember anyone's phone number?
No.
No. Okay. So... the other day when we're talking about Goldeneye and the Jamaican estate and with tennis courts and jet skis and villas and servants and Gina looked it up and said $1,000 a night.
Yeah, each calendar date has a number in it.
Right.
And it was like, between $675 and $920.
Right.
I was like, I'll take it.
Then I said, for that whole villa?
That's what it says.
And then Gina said, yep. And then I said, it must be by the room. It's virtually impossible. But you're dealing with Jamaica.
Yeah.
And people...
Could be a conversion thing.
People do that thing. Well, they do the thing all the time where they go, well, in Mexico, you can get this whole villa and servants for just,
$30 a night.
Same price you'd pay for a hotel in Boston or whatever. So there's an international element. But then I said... It must be one room per night.
Now,
and then Gina said...
I said, this is what it says, and I think Chris and I should go in on a double honeymoon. So
She said no.
Well,
it's for the whole thing.
I mean, I'm just looking at what the calendar said.
That's your opportunity to stop and go, this isn't a business model. You can't take 9 acres of luxury and do it for $1,000 a night.
So I was very intrigued by this steal of a price. So I did a little more investigating for personal reasons. And that is when I saw that obviously, of course it's by room. And guess how many rooms there are? 22.
Really?
Yeah. Who knows? I could be wrong, but that's what the computer says. So you literally...
I just shared one room with all the juggies, so I didn't...
That was my choice.
It's 11 or 12 of us.
So let me ask you.
Don't you feel ripped off?
Just one futon.
Did you guys literally buy out the entire resort?
Yeah.
22 rooms. If this computer is to be believed.
Discount. It was off season.
Because my God, there's hut rooms, there's poolside, there's lagoon side, there's everything you can imagine.
We probably had about all in 16, 17 people there, maybe, and left a few rooms open. And we bought out the whole thing for, I don't know, 4 days or 5 days or something like that.
Well, we could adjust for inflation, I guess. But if we took the average, which was between, $550 and $950, let's say $700 a night times 22.
Yeah. So it's 16 grand a year, a day.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Because I was so intrigued by this bargain steal that I looked this up on a personal level.
The problem with information is that it reminds me many years ago, I'm talking to my accountant. I know nothing of accounting or tax laws or any of that. And he's explaining, you donate $50,000 toward Jimmy's kids' college fund, and then you can write off the $50,000, and then he donates $50,000, and
oh, shit.
He gets to write that off.
Are Jimmy's kids hurting for a college fund?
Not anymore.
No, and I remember saying to him, "Yeah, but you can only do that once." And he said, no, I think you can do it as many times as you want. I said, if you can do it as many times as you want, then what's to stop me from donating 50 grand to every human being I know's kid and writing it all off?
Let's give it a try. Let's start in studio.
And everyone could do that.
Yeah, we work in a spiral fashion.
Right.
We'll be the proof of concept.
And then he goes, no, I think you can do it as many times as you want. And I'm just driving in my car. Remember where it was. And I'm like, I don't know anything. I know they're not going to let you do that. And he's like, pretty sure. And then, of course, I talked to him a day later. Yeah, I check. You only do it. By the way, when they tell you can only do it once, they pretend it's their idea at that point. Yeah. Hey, I checked into that thing. Turns out you can only, yes, it turns out it's what I said because
I don't know anything about that.
It doesn't make any sense. Just like this doesn't make it. Could you imagine $1,000 a night and you get 22 people in there? All right, everyone, we need $61 a night. We'll stay here for a week.
Well, and to be fair, question mark, I kind of was, and Bryan, I don't know if you were too, but because this was like somebody's property at one point, I thought this was like one big house. I didn't know it was like different hotel rooms.
Well, you know,
I was like, maybe.
There's another element here, Gina.
That I don't jet set too often?
Another dragon you need to slay.
Okay.
At some point, your personal wishes kick in.
That's true.
And now
why do you think I looked into this on my own time?
It gets cloudy. You know what I mean? So you go, $1,000. Oh, no, it's for the whole place, right? And then you get a little endorphin dump and you go, fuck, we could go there. Now you're not approaching it from just a umpire calling balls and strikes. Now you got skin in the game.
Yes.
And you're going to try to steer it toward this outcome that you want it to. And that's another issue that's more global than it is Gina in Jamaica. But yeah, you got to worry because then you start thinking like, well, good. This is what I want.
It's perfect.
And it becomes a little, can be a little self-fulfilling prophecy. At a certain point, someone's going to stop you because they're not going to take it. But
at the door. Ma'am, you don't have this whole place.
Yeah. But it's still, I mean, even for $700 a night or whatever the $695 was on the low end, if you get enough people, enough friends, family, whatever in there, it's worth it. It is worth the best 4 days of your life. And you do whatever you want because at night, it's like you don't have neighbors or anything. I mean, naked dance parties on the lawn in the rain, it doesn't matter. I remember Daniel brought his Lord sitar. I can see for miles.
Fall in love?
Daniel always packed like weird eclectic stuff. It was kind of before, I guess, everyone had their computer loaded up with songs and their phone, and he found a Lord sitar, and at some point may have had a couple of pops. I found myself probably naked on the lawn in a rainstorm about 2 a.m. with Lord sitar pumping, dancing my ass off. It's the best song ever written because it's the best of the Who, and then it's the best of Lord sitar.
1968.
Oh, wait a minute.
Is it a different Lord sitar?
No, but I had this thought. You know, when I was a kid, they called it sitting Indian style.
Yes.
You guys remember that?
That's what I thought it was called.
That's Native American Indian.
That's what I always thought. But if you play the sitar, you do sit that way when you play the sitar.
Makes more
and that's
sense.
an Indian instrument. So did we just... When I was a kid, if you said Indian, I don't care if you were talking about curry. I was like, the Comanches love curry. You know what I mean? Like everything got pushed into American Indian.
Right.
Maybe the whole time we're saying Indian style, we meant Eastern.
And that's a very common meditation pose.
Yes.
Crisscross applesauce, as
We
the
got to
kids
bring it
say.
back.
And also, American Indians weren't really known for sitting like it was. But
We'll sit around past the peace pipe. That's the whole, trope.
But we don't know in what way they were sitting.
Yeah.
What
They could have
is-
been lounging.
Now Chris has to look it up. My mind could be blown after all these years. I always thought American Indians, sitting Indians, but you would practice your yoga and play your sitar.
Sitar comes from the Persian word for three. Sit is 3 and tar is strings, so 3 strings. That's why they call it a sitar.
Okay, but also for Indian style,
Not the sitting part.
I have this.
understood it was
Not
a
the sitting
joke.
part.
The seated position that involves It's often compared to Sukhanasa or the easy pose in yoga.
Mm.
Crystal
Maybe there
Brain's
is
got
Look a little more, Chris, on sitting Indian style, but we may have had our wrong Indians the entire time.
Before we even got to use it correctly. It's over. Crisscross applesauce.
Now I think Indian style, American, and now they need their own style of sitting. Right. I would say that would be on a bar stool in front of a slot machine. Like that could be, I'm sitting Indian style.
I can see how that'd be hurtful.
Anyone got more nickels?
I can see how that'd be hurtful.
Well, but I'm saying like a more accurate modern
I know
day.
what you're saying.
Because we got to replace it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can't just leave them with no style of sitting.
I'm not understanding.
That would be offensive to leave them that way.
Look, I'm open to suggestions. I'm just saying like the most logical sitting.
Sure.
All right. So we got March Madness coming up as well. Innovation. You know, I had to dig deep for this March Madness because it's all stuff I've talked about before.
Yeah.
So
this
now
is where
you gotta,
champions are made.
Right.
Got to dig deep. First, a theory. A theory of that I've been exploring a little bit, which is I'll start by playing a clip. I think yesterday was International Transgender Day.
Oh, everybody, happy International Transgender.
And Biden gave
How does Sunny celebrate?
a speech on it. And he was talking about, well, we'll listen to the clip, but it's talking about the elderly transgender community.
Often overlooked.
They're rarely discussed.
Yeah.
That's right.
Today, we're announcing even more steps, but there's always more work to do to end the epidemic of violence against transgender women of color and girls of color, to ensure transgender
epidemic.
seniors can age with dignity.
All right, so we got to make sure transgender seniors age with dignity.
Sure.
And is it an epidemic against transgender? Statistically, it's not. Of course, it doesn't really exist statistically, but it's an epidemic. All right, and then I'll show you another clip, and then I'll get into my theory. Then we got Kamala Harris. She's talking about the anti-lynching law.
Please don't tell me she's giggling during it.
No.
To state unequivocally that lynching is and has always been a hate crime, and to make clear that the federal government may now prosecute these crimes as such. Lynching is not a relic of the past. Racial acts of terror still occur in our nation. And when they do, we must all have the courage to name them and hold the perpetrators to account.
I would say there's probably laws on the book about lynching somebody
I'd
that
like
would
to
fall
think so.
under a hate crime
Yeah.
law. But anyway, it just struck me.
Straight murder.
Would you like to know the last reported lynching as told by Google? If
Sure.
the computer's to be believed, 1981, and before that, I have 1945 and 1914.
And no one polished up that speech. You could change it and just keep the same exact message just by saying, yes, lynching may be a relic of the past. However, there is, then get into whatever message you want.
We want to symbolically right this wrong.
Yeah.
Yes, but no. So then my theory. My theory is you talk about lynching and you're talking about the elderly transgender living their life in peace and harmony. All right. That affects the amount of people that affects in this country, whether it's lynching or the elderly transgender community, is somewhere between jack and shit. Now, what does affect us is like gas prices, the border, Ukraine, inflation, schools, and stuff like that. My theory is talk about invisible nonsense, and it can never be quantified. Right. Because if you talk about the border, someone will go, there's been X amount of border crossings in the month of March, and then compared to 2019, there were this many, and gas prices have gone up 57% in the last quarter alone. And then you go inflation, a pound of beef used to be $6.99, now it's $9.99. That's all quantifiable, and you don't want to get into that shit. But transgender elderly and invisible lynchings, they're all just like up in the ether. And then it's a lot of talk about dignity, like you should be able to transition with dignity and safety and whatever it is. It's all subjects that are invisible subjects that don't impact anybody, and you can pull everyone's attention toward this thing that doesn't exist and not talk about whatever does exist, which is fine if you're one of my mom's friends and you're sitting in the backyard in 1974 and getting high. But it's not good policy-wise. It's not good for like gas prices and borders and economy stuff. I want some more nuts and some bolts.
Well, that makes sense. And when you talk about this ranges somewhere between jack and shit, I think that also applies to who's not on board with lynching being a hate crime and who wants to hurt the elderly transgender. Nobody I've ever met. No. I've met a lot of people.
No, it's this constant beating of a drum of like it's sort of this thing where it's like it's used sometimes, but it's like if I just kept talking about how much Bryan was beating his wife and how we need to stop, and then
is that still going on?
And then you'd go, I don't beat my wife, and then they'd go, no, yeah, but it's an epidemic,
right,
and
anymore.
You're there, and it happens in Culver City. It's like you just keep bringing it up. It seems like we're living in a kind of a piece of shit society if it's 2022 and we must pass legislation to stop something that doesn't exist.
I feel bad.
Yes. The whole racist beat ourselves over the head society angle is starting to backfire, but it's just going to fuck people up. And kids especially have no fucking context. They just go, this is where we're living.
Well, and that's also why with the Will Smith, Chris Rock thing, it got so confusing so quickly because everybody was weighing in. It's a pop culture. I mean, this will go down in history. And even a friend of mine who's a comic, a female comic, said, this reminds me, I've been a comic for 25 years and I had a restraining order against my ex-husband and I was afraid he'd show up in the audience and come up and smack me and whatever. And somebody, I think it was a pansexual, bi-cross curious, I don't remember what her bio said, or something like that, said, you're a white lady, so shut up and stay in your lane.
So that's you?
No, to my friend who was saying this. I'm like, but she's a comedian talking about not wanting to get hit while she's doing a joke. So how much more in her lane can she be?
It's just, well, the byproduct of this is going to be, you can't talk. It's like I always said, it's like the slippery slope of, well, we'll get Michael Strahan to interview Jussie Smollett or Robin Roberts. So it's like black people have to interview black people, and or women have to interview women, like this thing. And then so naturally now, if you pipe up, someone will go, "Oh, you're white. What do you have the right to?" It's not a good direction.
But I will say, where we've come the farthest? I was thinking about this the other day. The game show, the dating game show. Because remember, like, say, Love Connection, there would be a bunch of white dates and then there'd be like a sprinkling of black dates. Well, now we got The Bachelor, we got the diversity free-for-all, we got Love is Blind. I'm into it.
Isaac from the Love Boat couldn't... Once every 3 seasons, he got laid because one of the Pointer Sisters came onto the ship. He couldn't bang a white...
I didn't know those were the rules.
He couldn't fuck a white chick. And it was always all white.
Right.
So there's nothing for him to do.
God forbid.
Every episode, Doc and Gopher were chasing tail all around the fan deck. But poor Isaac just sitting there wiping that glass down in perpetuity. But every once in a while, the Pointer Sister would come on, and then he could try to get laid.
Well, who is laid more than the bartender? The guy making the drinks and, hey, tell me your troubles.
Yeah.
Not Isaac. He had to stay in his ebony lane. All right, should we crank it up there, Dawson?
It's time once again for the big rants of March Madness. Yesterday, 2 tee-off triggers advanced out of the irate 8, closing out the pop culture conference. Unlike on Hot Ones, DJ Khaled didn't quit and treated Colin Kaepernick the same way as the NFL, locking him out of the tournament. And in the final round of the big government conference, like Max Apatow's burglarized luggage, the TSA sent the teachers union packing. Today, we finalized the Furious 4 with 2 more irate 8 matchups. First, for the Classics Conference crown, unrinsed coffee mugs versus backup beepers.
Unrinsed coffee mugs. Unrinsed coffee mugs really for me is just a stitch in time saves 9. And nobody fucking is a seamstress anymore. Nobody does any stitching or mending anymore. So I would like to upgrade it to a rinse in time saves 9. It's really just saying once that mug's by the sink or in the sink, spritz, done. It's not 30 seconds of your time, Your Highness. It's not 15 seconds. It's somewhere between 2.7 and 3.5 seconds of your goddamn time to stop the extra 10 minutes of fucking trying to rinse it out with your hands stuffed in the goddamn sink, rubbing at it like some sort of retarded kid in the corner of an asylum. And somebody needs to invent a dedicated rinse mug apparatus where it has a handle and it's flat, it's round on the bottom, and you just drop it in and try to do the old pepper mill for 10 seconds and it's done. It is a rinse in time, saves 9 lives of this podcast host. Backup beepers. Oh, innovation. First off, rules, then innovation. We don't need every fucking thing to have a backup beeper. This is a slippery slope. Your fucking kid's Tonka trunk doesn't need a fucking backup beeper. New rule. If the tire of the vehicle is lower than your knee, it cannot have a backup beeper. You can't get run over by something with a shopping cart wheel. You can get bumped or nudged. That's on you, but you can't be run over. But then I started thinking, what about the beep itself? It can't be avoided. It's everywhere. It's ubiquitous. It wakes me up every fucking Thursday. No more beeps. No more beeps. It's going to be scent related now. Oh. A spritz of cinnamon. Ooh. A 6-foot spritz of cinnamon compressed air. Out. Oh, I guess I better move. And for me, instead of being waking up by a fucking beep every morning, I would wake up and go, who's making pancakes? Is somebody making toast? French toast? A spritz of cinnamon. That shall replace the beep.
Oh, boy.
Wow.
Again, I thought we were going to be a lock with mugs, but now I am not so sure.
I am very intrigued by this innovation. I would quibble with cinnamon because the next time someone walks past an IHOP or, God forbid, a Starbucks in the holiday season.
Well, and I would like to say it is innovative in this application, but Disneyland's been doing this for decades. They spray this shit, the scent in it, so you know you're in Frontierland.
To get you out of here? Oh,
yeah,
I see what you're saying.
Right. So, God, I do like a rinse in time saves 9. I like the evolution of it. It definitely makes more sense than a stitch. I don't know anyone else who darns socks.
We can replace the cinnamon with that's the fart smell.
Yeah.
It's probably better to do something.
What is that? It's God, there's a
sulfur.
Sulfur. Just a little sulfur, because then you're standing with your back and you're like, oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Who
I don't know if
win?
he's allowed to amend his own.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Also,
You're right. Don't factor it in.
If you live by the tar pits, you're constantly jumping out of the way.
That's a good point.
What do we do?
I gotta go. I'm leaning towards the innovation, which really impressed me. So I'm gonna go.
You're going backup
beeper?
beeper? Let's do it.
And like the state itself, someone is leaving the California conference. Will it be Barbara Ferrer or the LA Marathon?
Barbara Ferrer. Barbara the Hair Ferrer. Fucking her hair looks like Medusa was raped by a mop. Okay, and this is my point. From now on, we need someone who gives a shit about their hair, because the entire pandemic, every fucking middle-aged chick I spoke to, they didn't give a fuck about the schools closing down, the restaurants, Disney. They didn't give a fuck about any of it, but their hair, the salon. Oh, what about my roots? What about the gray? That motivated them all. They all fucking got out of the house. They went to speakeasies. They went to garages. It was a full fucking Fight Club situation going on with women, all heavily motivated by hair. Again, fuck the kids, fuck the unions, fuck employment, fuck the economy, but my hair, now you've got my attention, and I'm snapping into action. So we can no longer have bitches who don't care about their hair in charge of policy. Next time, we have Kathy Ireland. She's the right age, she has wonderful hair, and she gives a shit about it. LA Marathon. Let's open this up to everyone. Sure, everyone trains. The Kenyans fucking win every year. Blah, blah, blah. You prove something to yourself. We get it. Well, what about the fat, red-headed gamers? What about the pasty kids that are sitting in their basement? What about those guys who want to go out and compete? And then what about us who have to watch it, who are outside of the lame family, sorry, Gina, cheering them on and holding a fucking smart water at the fucking finish line? How about we add some innovation? How about we add some strategy? And the strategy now for a fucking marathon is run your ass off and see if you can keep up with the Kenyans. How about some golden scooters? How about there's golden scooters placed around? How about a dumpster with a ticket in it that skipped you ahead 5 miles? Let's open this up to strategy. Have some, hey, I got the golden ticket that Kenya's got to carry me piggyback for the next 7 blocks. Open it up and then have some fat redhead pasty gamer crossing the finish line 20 minutes ahead of the Kenyans. That I would watch.
I am having a very, very tough time with this because he described me to a T. I had many speakeasy haircuts during the pandemic, but there was some fucking genius buried in that marathon rant.
I'm going to have to lean on you for the hair insights because to me it's all just white noise. I had no idea what he was talking
I was calling
about.
people to my back porch.
Really?
Everything he described, it was like he had a nanny cam in my house.
Interesting.
So this is an interesting take on why Ferrer's doing such a bad job. But I love the Candyland approach to LA Marathon. Do we farm this out to Dawson?
I'm on board with you. I like the LA Marathon.
Should we go? Because I want to see what other innovations. I like the golden scooter a lot.
Yeah, I like the Kenyan carrying you. They're skinny people, but they're strong.
LA Marathon it is.
Much like my hair in middle school, Barbara prefers out.
Right.
So backup beepers and the LA Marathon will move on to the Furious Four. Tune in tomorrow for the 2 matchups of the Furious Four to find out who goes to the championship of March Madness.
All right, the dear Judd Apatow is going to join us right after this.
In the spirit of Murrow, Jennings, Cronkite, here's another great moment in local news.
Oh, the things you'll see working the late shift as a gas station clerk. The customer in the colorful hoodie decided to leave his mark, literally using a snack rack as a urinal.
Here we go.
But wait, now the crew helps themselves to some free snacks, even the soiled ones on the ground.
It's in the bathroom. Don't on my chips. Now I can't buy chips for 2 weeks.
That's a great moment in local news. Now, back to the Adam Carolla Show.
Judd Apatow, writer, director, producer, comedian, has joined us. Got a book out called Sicker in the Head, More Conversations About Life and Comedy. And then also, that's available now on Amazon. And then the movie The Bubble, which is available now on Netflix, which is a star-studded affair. Good to see you again, Judd.
It's good to be here with you all. How is it going?
Good. It strikes me that you started off as sort of the keeper of comedy when we spoke about all those early interviews you would do with comedians as a 15-year-old boy, maybe even younger. And now it just seems like you're the creator but curator of like all things comedy. Is that a heavy burden? Is the crown heavy?
Well, I think it's just that, I've always been just a fan of it. And I've loved documentaries for a long time, like you. And so part of it is, I interviewed people as a kid, and I just finished a documentary about George Carlin that's going to be on HBO in May. And I just like going deeper. As I get older, I just really am fascinated with, what went wrong in their lives that made them funny? How did they try to keep their shit together? How did they try to stay funny over long periods of time? Did they get wiser? Did they lose their minds? Like, all of that is really interesting to me.
Well, the Carlin, I think it's a 2-part doc that's coming out.
Yep.
And you couldn't get all of him in one part. That's for damn sure. I was always a huge Carlin fan. Everyone was a huge Carlin fan. But I didn't know a lot about him, like personally. Were there things that were revelations to you?
The funny thing about Carlin was, he had no jokes about his family. He didn't do bits about his daughter, about his wife, and it was all social commentary or little observations that he did. And he had a really tumultuous time. He was a cocaine addict for a very long time, going on multiple day binges, always by himself. He didn't like to party with people. He liked to sit and write, listen to music, and I think that certainly like hurt him physically. He died of a heart attack, and he was obsessed with language and words, and would just sit there for hours and hours writing these amazing routines, and was a little bit of a loner. Like, he didn't like to hang. Like, you never hear stories of him hanging with all the comics.
The also in the doc department, the Zen Diaries of Gary Shandling, which came out in 2018, which I enjoyed very much, was very well done. And I mean, I suppose you are a person that if you aim your tractor beam towards something, it will be, and you don't have to agree, I'll just lavish this on you, but it's going to be good. It's going to be good because it's sort of, and then maybe, being the Swiss Army knife of comedy, you can use that if you want. I mean, I was listening to you being interviewed on Spade's podcast, and it was like, you forget, SNL, writing for Roseanne, writing jokes for comedians, and working with Norm Macdonald, like way back, like always Ben Stiller early, just TV docs, features, like books. I mean, do you just feel like if you can concentrate on a subject, you will bring it to life?
Well, the main thing is that I'm old. I can't believe I'm old now. Like, I have stories that are like 35 years old. Like when me and David Spade talk about, the early days, it's like 35 years ago when he lived down the street, when I lived with Sandler, and Rob Schneider lived across the street. But I was the same then. Like, I was obsessed with just anyone who was funny. Like, I remember hearing Norm Macdonald and then seeing him on TV in the like 1990 or 89 or something. And I remember showing the tape to Sandler and going, isn't this guy amazing? Isn't he going to be big? And Sandler would be like, who cares? I want to be big. I don't care about this guy. And I was the fanboy. Everyone else was so hungry to succeed, but I was nerding out on how good everyone else was. And then, of course, Sandler becomes one of Norm's biggest supporters and puts him in tons of movies and tours with him for years. But as a young guy, I was blown away when I would meet anyone new who was great.
Brian's got one after this, but as I was listening to you being interviewed, I realized that you sort of took the added value road, and everyone else in comedy, stand-up especially, they took the lone wolf, narcissistic, not necessarily in a horrible way, but stand-up is you alone on stage. You don't have a bass player and a drummer and a lead guitar. It's just you. It's an endeavor it's a solo endeavor. And so I think a lot of guys were like, how do I make my star brighter? How do I get onto this? How do I? And Judd was like, how do I help other people and get involved with other people and make them better? And then that ended up making you so diverse that there was actually more success than if you'd turned in and went, how do I get my own HBO special?
Yeah, I think that's right in terms of my philosophy, because as a kid who loved comedy, my dream was that any of those people would talk to me and that I would be a part of it. I didn't think like, I must be the star. I just thought, wouldn't it be great to be one of the writers of Saturday Night Live and to be part of these groups like Second City TV or Monty Python? I wanted the community of it probably most of all. And I think it's fun to try to figure out how to make other people funny. So when we start a movie and we're like, how do you make Kumail Nanjiani the lead of a movie where he kills and it's emotional? Like, the challenge of helping him and Emily pull that off, that's the thing that seems really interesting to me.
Bryan?
Well, I do have a question. It's about that, but real quick, a fun bit of trivia, bringing it full circle. First ever host of SNL, George Carlin.
George Carlin. Yeah, he was the first host of SNL, and he did the baseball routine.
He did.
Oh, it's a great bit.
Yeah.
That's back when the host, he didn't do any sketches. He just he did stand up here and there.
Did
I do have, sorry, a
go ahead.
follow-up question of what you were just talking about, because Judd, it's the most interesting part of your career for me, which is talk about you talked about with Kamala, but talk about how you with Amy Schumer or with Pete Davidson or Kamala or anyone, you take someone who is funny and has talent and they're on their way, but you somehow synthesize and extrapolate that whatever makes them special into a full-length movie or narrative or whatever. Talk about that chemistry, that alchemy.
Well, some of it is just, as a kid, I used to see people on TV and wish there was more of them to watch. So I remember watching Michael Keaton on the Mike Douglas show. And I thought, man, if there was a movie with this guy, I would love to watch it. And that was before whatever, Mr. Mom and Night Shift came out. And I think even now when I watch comedians in a comedy club, it doesn't really matter if they're famous or not. I just every once in a while get a sense like, oh, if this person had the movie, it would be the great movie. And a lot of these people have stories. Amy Schumer had an amazing story. Pete Davidson has a really tragic but emotional story. And then I just think, well, I'd like to help him try to figure that out. And it is a little like therapy. You sit and you talk and you say, what are you going through? And how do you think in a story you would solve your problem?
Yeah, it seems to me that a lot of your approach to comedy is sort of from the therapist approach. And I've always liked that kind of comedy too. I've never really thought that comedy and psychiatry or psychology specifically, we're very far apart. I feel like they lived in the same place. It's just there's a little twist on the comedy side that makes everyone laugh, but they have to all think that way. It has to be kind of an understanding. They have to vibe on it. And has your comedy evolved as your therapy has evolved?
Probably I just find some courage to try to go deeper. Like working with Pete Davidson, I'm scared. I want to do right by Pete as his collaborator. I know that it's all sensitive stuff. It's all about grief and trauma. And how do you make a story out of that that's, mainly fictionalized that respects him and his family and his journey and make it really funny, a lot of the time. But I think as I've gotten to know myself better, I can help other people figure that out. Because how I always explain it to people is it's almost like we're writing a movie where we're creating a story where someone crashes. And if they were to learn the lesson, what would the crash need to be to get you to figure out your stuff and change?
Gina's got one right after this. It's funny, well, not funny, but Ivan Reitman passed recently, and I've told the story before, but Judd, obviously the 40-Year-Old Virgin, is one of the funniest movies ever made. And I told Judd that Jimmy Kimmel and I pitched that story to Reitman. It would have been the 36-year-old version of the 40-Year-Old Virgin. And even a guy you've worked with, the Tim Herlihy, ended up, we found ourselves sitting in a hotel room in New York with Tim Herlihy punching it up. He kind of punched it a little more sideways than up. But either way, I could remember Reitman yelling at us, nobody's going to believe there's a 36-year-old virgin. And in our story, Jimmy was the virgin. I was his buddy. I had to get him laid. We ended up in Mexico, blah, blah, blah. And Reitman's like, nobody's going to believe that. And then 3 years later.
The magic's in the age, buddy.
Right.
It's in the age.
He needed to be 4 years older. You needed an even 40 number. But when I was working on that with Carolla, and that was Carolla's idea, it was based on a sketch he had experimented with but never finished at Second City in Chicago about a guy at a poker game and everyone trades sex stories. And he clearly is making his up. And so he's talking about
a bag of sand.
Yeah. The weird one was that, and you put your hand down a girl's pants, you know how it smells like baby powder? That was the one that so he pitched that to me, and I said, well, if you did that really real and human, it would be very funny. And I pitched everybody, and most everyone turned it down for the same reason you got turned down. And then finally we were able to get it set up at Universal. But I was doing a movie at DreamWorks at the time and pitched it to them. I was just finishing up Anchorman. And I said, let's do Carolla now. And here's the idea. And they didn't go for it. And then I told Sony and they didn't go for it. So it wasn't that easy to get set up.
Yeah, Gina.
Question about your kids, and then a story I would love for you to confirm, hopefully not deny, but we'll find out.
Yes.
Your daughters are amazing, you know that, and I mean, I remember Iris was in Love, right, and Maude, of course, in Euphoria steals the show. How involved are you in coaching them? Is that natural? I mean, they're obviously born actresses. How does that work?
Well, they started acting when they were really little in a bunch of my movies, mainly because I didn't want to meet other people's kids. I just thought it'd be fun to hang out with my kids. And then it's almost like home movies, and we'd have all this incredible film. And they turned out to be really funny and interesting. And by doing it, it would be every couple of years, they got very confident on the set. They weren't scared of 80 people staring at them. Right. And by working with, a lot of great people, they just picked up on it in the way like a little kid might get good at the piano. And it's all we talk about at the house. Sometimes I think, was it unfair of me? Because if I talked about dentistry all the time, maybe they would have been amazing oral surgeons. But I only talked about jokes and acting and stories. So I don't really help them now other than, say, everything's going to go better if you get more sleep. I'm not really coaching them other than like the basic of like, take good care of yourself. It's a hard job. It's a little bit of a marathon of work. And the healthier you are, the more you'll have good brain energy to put into the performance.
It's the family business.
If you just talked about dentistry, you'd probably give them an eating disorder. I don't think they'd become oral surgeons. I think they'd hate your guts. They transition and they'd have an eating disorder if it was just dentistry.
Yeah. I would love to. I heard a story on one of the comedy networks on Sirius one time, and I would love for you to confirm or deny this if you know. Okay. A story that has stuck with me for a couple of years when I heard something to the effect of when you were young and you were writing to Steve Martin, who I guess is you were a big fan, talk about fanboy, and he hadn't written back and you were writing him more. And finally it kind of got ugly. Like you sent him some sort of a nasty letter to which he responded, "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know you were the Judd Apatow before you were the Judd Apatow." That is one of my favorite stories and I hope it's true.
Well, it is basically true. But what's so weird is it was 42 years ago. I mean, that's the weirdest part about the story is how old the story is. But I knew where he lived, and I was like 13, and I would always ask my grandmother to pass by his house. So anywhere we went, we had to pass by his house. And one day he was out front, and I asked for his autograph. And as he should, he said no. Because, and he goes, "I don't want everyone knocking on my door." And so I didn't understand that as a kid. So I wrote him a long letter saying, you wouldn't live in that house if I didn't buy all your records, all your movies. And if you don't send me an apology, I'm going to send your address to Homes of the Stars, and you'll have tour buses passing by 24 hours a day. And then like 4 months later, I got a book of Cruel Shoes, a book he had put out. And that was the inscription is to Judd. "I'm sorry, I didn't realize I was speaking to the Judd Apatow." But I was 13 years old.
Fantastic.
At the time. And we did a photo for Vanity Fair like 10 years ago where he was running a tour bus in front of my house. And I was yelling at him in my bathroom. And it was just a great day because he's the best. I mean, he's the one that made so many of us want to do comedy. And the fact that I think he thought my letter was funny. Like he wrote back because he laughed at it. And on some level, it gave me some confidence if I could make the funniest person in the world think it was worth responding.
Such a great story.
The only celebrity that lived anywhere near me was Grandpa Al Lewis.
Yeah, that's a good one, though.
It's good, but he didn't have the legs, the upside that Steve Martin has. There'll be no Vanity Fair shoots in the future.
Yeah, well, that was what I visited my grandma when I was a kid. The only person that lived near us was Mort Drucker, who drew all of the
Mort
cartoons
Drucker.
for the big article in Mad
Magazine.
Wow.
And he lived in the neighborhood, and Bobby Nystrom from the Islanders. That was our two celebrities.
Writing the book, Sicker in the Head, which is the follow-up to Sick in the Head from 2016. And I'm looking at Letterman and Will Ferrell and John Mulaney and Pete Davidson, Whoopi Goldberg. Here's a philosophical question, because guys like Letterman strike me as they're geniuses, but I feel troubled to me. I always feel like there's some sort of internal battle that's keeping them from true happiness. But you've interviewed him and went in depth with him, and I'm curious, like, who is the happiest of all the comedians? Is it Sandler? Is it Will Ferrell?
Who's the least tortured?
Yeah, it's not Letterman. Yeah. Who?
That's a very good question. Who is the least of everyone? The least tortured. I mean, certainly there could be a very good argument that it's Will Ferrell, and that his comedy comes from a very joyous, absurd, intelligent place, because I've never seen him in a weird space other than if like someone was rude or disrespectful to someone else, he really does not like that. That's the thing where he will be unhappy and let that be known. He's very protective of people being treated well, but he is a happy person. I think that's what we like about him, that it's just pure joy. It's not like through that veil of where Shandling, you felt the torture, you felt the overthinking and how troubled he was. And you related to that in a way. But Will, it is like a pure funny. And there's not that many people like that who are, you just see them and they're just hard funny. Like the second they start talking, like Kate McKinnon, who's in our movie, or Fred Armisen, they're just pure fun.
Yeah, Fred is very, I don't want to say underrated in the community, but maybe by society at large. And just like, if you could put him in if you could take comedians and put them in a Cuisinart and see how much funny poured into the glass, Fred's would overflow, but you wouldn't know it. You'd think he'd be in at 7 ounces, and meanwhile it'd just be pouring over the top of that tumbler. So he's so versatile. He did a Crank Yankers. Chris, you can look for it. Maybe we'll play it later. He did a Crank Yankers episode for us as an American Indian, and it was just funny as shit, but it was super quiet. And the reason it was funny is it wasn't cartoon character American Indian. It was super low-key American Indian. I will add a quiet dark horse to the happy comedian department. He's just on my mind because I think I might go over to his shop after this. Jay Leno. Now, Jay Leno doesn't walk around whistling and clicking his heels together. He's just never in a bad mood. He's always even. You can always just talk about anything with him. He never talks shit about anybody else. He's going about his life.
Even if his Chick-fil-A order gets messed up,
he won't even mention it.
I fucked up his Chick-fil-A order. He was fine eating my fries. Like, he is in Burbank working on a motorcycle right now. And without not a care in the world,
nary a care,
not thinking about the young bucks coming up, nipping at his heels, or where's his.
He's so nice, Jay. I mean, when I think of all the times he's been kind to me. First of all, I interviewed him when I was 16 years old at Rascals in West Orange, New Jersey, and he was so cool. There's a hilarious picture of it out there. And then when I wanted to write comedy, Kevin Rooney, the great comedian and writer who worked with Jay a lot, gave a bunch of my monologue jokes to give to him to potentially do on The Tonight Show. And he called my house at like midnight. I lived with my grandmother. My grandmother wakes me up. She's like, Jay Leno's on the phone.
At 16?
And this is like when I was like 19 or 20. And I pick up the phone and it's Leno basically telling me he doesn't like my jokes, but in the nicest way. He's just like, you're close, but you should keep trying. And then, later on I would go do that show and he would come in and chat. And when I made This Is 40, he called me and he's like, Judd, I saw the movie. It's just terrific. It's just great. And I don't always call.
Yeah. And so here's an interesting thing from a guy who lived through it in Judd Apatow. There was the late night war thing, and there was the Leno camp, and there was the Letterman camp. And first off, I had to practically live with Jimmy Kimmel, who was an insane Letterman. Like, I mean, his vanity license plate on his Isuzu iMark said like late night on it. He had the late night bomber jacket. He had the Letterman jacket. Right? He had a Letterman. I mean, at 15, 16, I mean, he was ensconced. Like he was, and it was Coke versus Pepsi. You had to declare major. You couldn't just go, well, I like the Raiders and the Rams. Oh, no. You had to pick a side. And there's this thing where it's like, Letterman's a genius. And I think creatively, we all kind of vibed with Letterman, but then we turned Leno into a douche. Fuck that guy. And it was like, I don't know, he seems pretty cool to me. And we got into this camp, and as it turns out, Leno turned out to be a pretty nice guy. But what's your head on that?
I mean, I never bought into any of it either way. When I was a kid, no one was funnier than Leno. He would go on Letterman and murder. I saw him live a ton of times headlining at the Improv, and then he got his show, and I think he made a decision to be a solid, middle of the road, almost, whatever, Bob Hope, Carson-esque type of person. And he did that show for decades and was insanely successful and was so nice to so many people that the idea that people are actually upset about who do you like better. Like, I didn't understand, like, Bill Hicks being so mad that Jay Leno did a Pringles commercial. I mean, look now, everyone does a commercial. The Who does a commercial. Bob Dylan does a commercial. And he crucified Leno for doing a commercial like he had sold his soul to the Lay's Corporation. I never thought that any of that was fair. And obviously, Letterman, I went to a show the first 3 months of Letterman. I went and saw Robert Klein on Letterman in like 82, 80, I forgot what year the show started. So I was always obsessed with Letterman also. But it's like rap, people being mad at each other. It just hyped up the whole thing. When I worked at Larry Sanders, everyone was writing stories about, the need to succeed that drives everyone nuts and makes everyone competitive. And maybe it was good for all of them to just be in the news talking about their shows.
What are everything for you, or most things for you, seems about story and comedy and docs and then the family, but the family's woven into the stories as well. Good thing everyone's good. Is there some part of you that does other things? Like, I don't mean to sound sort of condescending, but I just mean, do you split your time?
What else am I doing?
Well, what I mean, the aforementioned Leno is in his garage right now fucking around with motorcycles. He has no thoughts about comedy.
Do you have a model train set, perchance?
Yes. I know. Do I have a hobby is the question. Well, I mean, I think all this stuff is leisure in a way. There's pressure to it. But, leisure for me is to do a show at Largo and, convince someone like Beck to do a benefit with me. I mean, so most of it is fun hanging with your pals, trying to think of stupid stuff that makes people laugh. Outside of that, I mean, I spend time with my family and my kids, and I'm usually just doing what they want to do. You know how that works. They go, hey, let's go shop for 6 hours. And you have just decided in life that you will make that completely enjoyable, even though there's no part of you that wants to do it.
Is there part that causes friction in that? I find myself going to my daughter's volleyball games, which can go up to 9.5 hours, by the way. It's not one game. It's an entire burnt Saturday in Orange County. And I'm just sitting there. And I realize I'm going to be sitting here for between 7 and 11 hours. And I look at that as a colossal waste of my Saturday. Not that I don't enjoy watching her, but somewhere...
we got the message.
Somewhere
loud and clear.
My fantasy is to go to whoever organizes this stuff and go, hey, would you like to watch me do stand-up? And they'd go, yeah, that'd be awesome. And I go, how about for 11 fucking hours?
But if I move on to the next round, we come back in 3.
Yes.
Well, I discourage all sports from both daughters.
Good.
Because of that.
But
I literally thought to myself, I'm not doing this. And then out of the blue, my youngest decides she wants to do competitive cheerleading. So
Wow.
for 2 years, I'm like getting on planes to go to like Vegas or Sacramento. And then finally, she just naturally lost interest. And I just was so happy. Even though I enjoy watching her do it,
I know.
like I was always like against being the screaming parent. And it's also terrifying. Like they'd lift her up and I'd be like, you better hold her steady. You better hold her steady.
Well,
like there was it's scary.
It's essentially what happens when a loved one dies in hospice care. You're like, I'm glad. I mean, they're out of pain now. I'm out of pain. I mean, I loved him. I loved Nana. Don't get me wrong, but I'm glad. I'm glad they stopped doing this thing. They're in a better place. I'm in a better place called fucking home. but the question was I find myself and I go, look, I'm gonna be sitting up here for 9 hours. I got to bring a buck slip and I got to make some notes. Like I'm going to have ideas. I got to write something down. I got to have some ideas. So now at some point she'll look up at me and she'll see me inevitably looking down and writing something down. And then she'll think I'm checked out or tuned out. And so in the family...
Nice set.
Yeah, it can cause a little because you are always somewhere in your head. You're always kind of like, oh, that would be a funny idea for Pete, whatever that is, which makes you... your highest attention level they're ever going to get from you is 73%. They're never going to get 100.
Well, yeah. Well, I think, these things for me, I'm about to have my 25th anniversary, have been negotiated over many decades of like, if we go shopping, I will have to, talk to the girls and say, do you mind if I sit while you look at the shoes? And some days they're like, no, look at the shoes with me. And the idea of zoning out or like just scrolling the phone, it does take a while to go, oh, that's like really offensive to the fact that you're with people. I mean, they say like presence is the best gift you can give people, but also I don't care about the shoes. and you, at some point you are trying to get across, I love you and I am going to look at every shoe with you. And usually they sense my lack of interest, even though I'm pretending, and they ask me to sit down.
Well, you're already head and shoulders above all the other dads because you're asking permission to sit down, as opposed to, I will be over here. Let me know when you're done.
Well, can I say this? It's not a two-way street. It's like,
no.
I like cars. I'm going to say to my daughter, we're going to go rim shopping today. I want you just to hang out while I look at some rims for my race car. Like,
do you see rings? That sounds great.
I wouldn't put you through that misery. You don't like it.
Yes, you're right. There's no activity. Like I live with 3 women. Well, 2 of them have just moved out. There's no activity that's my version of shopping that they will do with me for hours and hours and hours. And if I get them to do whatever that might be, go to a store to buy, autographs or some dumb thing I'm interested in, I get 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I will not get a marathon.
Yes. You basically get shit they want to do and hiking, which is a neutral, that's right in the middle. Hiking is the one thing that does not favor feminine or masculine one iota. There's that, but anything north of hiking, they're out. And that's
true.
That's the real problem. So they talk about the double standard, Gina, but I think we have one working our own.
We're suffering here too.
So Letterman, sorry. How long did you interview Letterman? I'm fascinated with him.
And it was probably almost 2 hours. And, he's so nice a person. I heard him on Mark Maron's podcast, and he was so open about the fact that he was obsessed with his show doing well every day, that in a way, the anxiety and focus of that made him miss it. Like he felt like he had missed a lot of the experience due to the intensity of it. And I feel like he's just so nice and in a better space and reflective about the experience and very open about it. And for us who never had access to Letterman, he was never at a party. He was never someone that you would see around. The fact that now he is a little bit, and you might get that chance to talk about, hey, how was that for you? What was that like? Feels fantastic. And at the end of the interview, I said to him, I really want to say this to you, and I want to thank you because you inspired so many of us to go into comedy, inspired how we do comedy, and so many of us you put on the show and changed our lives. And I just want to thank you. And he got very uncomfortable and just said, that's right. There'd be no comedy without me.
Well, let me give some plugs out. The movie, The Bubble, it's available now on Netflix, and it is star-studded with great performances all the way around. And the book, Sicker in the Head, more conversations about life and comedy. That's available now on Amazon. And then we can look forward to the 2-part George Carlin doc in May on HBO. Look at that, right?
Correct.
Which
yes, sir.
I really look forward to. And I hope that you keep going down this road of making docs with comedians, because the Shandling one was amazing. Just amazing.
What's your next doc? What's the next one that's landing?
I'm working on a multi-parter, which is K-Rock, the radio station out here.
Yes.
I've
heard of this. What's the timing when I get to see
Doc Worthy? Well, you can come over to the shop and see the dailies. I'm working on one, coincidentally, a Bobby Rahal one. Letterman Rahal own a indie team, so that's the other side of Letterman Rahal racing. Working on one about Dan Gurney, who I don't know if you guys know. He was like the biggest race car winner in the world, and but an innovator, and he built all this stuff. But the other thing about Dan Gurney, he was 6'4" and looked like Dolph Lundgren. And if you find the right picture of Dan Gurney, because he was like matinee idol, won every race, and then started building cars that won every race and just kept going. They invented something for him. You saw the Ford v Ferrari, and they're like the car, the GT40, the Ford GT40. It's called GT40 because it's 40 inches. The roof's only 40 inches out there. He's the guy, he's 6'4". He couldn't get in that car. They invented something called the Gurney bubble, which is a blister, a bubble on top of the roof where his helmet would be.
That's very Fred Flintstone.
Like a gunner's turret on the top.
Yeah, so he's a really interesting guy. But, you know, I just made this note, and I'll just put it out. He also, Dan Gurney invented spraying champagne. I know it sounds weird, but he won Le Mans in the late 60s, and he got up on the podium, and he started spraying. It was considered exquisitely rude to spray camera people and reporters and stuff. But he invented the thing that everyone does now all the time. So kind of an interesting story with him. But also for you, in the Pete Davidson mold, I was interviewing on the show the other Friday last week, Gabriel Iglesias, Fluffy. And he's telling me, he's added a second show to his Dodger Stadium show. So he's sold out.
Yeah,
now, we couldn't do that unless we paired up. I would feature, but he sold.
That's rough.
He sold 45,000 tickets have been sold, and we must add a second show. But his crazy upbringing, poverty, what he had to go through, like sleeping, and he's a good actor. I've seen Magic Mike, baby. He can act, and I thought. Weirdly, that he's dealing with his weight all the time, had a lot of adversity. Now he's selling out Dodger Stadium, like started off in miniature clubs in Long Beach and really bad parts of town. Dad was in a mariachi band, never met him. Wow. You know what I mean? Like there's some meat, pardon the pun, on that bone. And and if you notice, they don't make that many movies for that community, like big comedy. So you have a guy like that, he's selling out Dodger Stadium 2 nights in a row. Why aren't there an enormous amount of Latinx, big, like Kevin Hart comedies? Yeah. You know, that's like the weird thing about the system, because clearly,
there are people that feel like, well, where's my comedy? I'm willing to sit at the top row of Dodger Stadium together.
Yeah, and it's like, again, I think what we do as a business is we go, let's have that guy be the goofy guy in the sitcom with the laugh track, but a real kind of train wreck,
right?
Pete Davidson kind of deep dive on him for that community. You'd be a hero, Judd. You're already a hero to the Jews. What about the Latino?
That's a good
Spread
pitch.
it out. I'm spreading it out. I've done Ashkenazis and Sephardics. I gotta widen my path.
All right. Food for thought. Judd, always great to see you, my friend.
Great to see all of you. Thank you so much.
Take care. All right. Let me tell you about Meguiar's. Yeah, car waxes. They've come a long way over the last few years. Meguiar's launched the next generation of protective products, specifically geared toward DIYers. Hybrid ceramic spray wax, Meguiar's hybrid ceramic liquid wax, hybrid ceramic spray detailer, hybrid ceramic wash and wax, and the hybrid wash glove as well. For 2022, Meguiar's has introduced hybrid ceramic pre-wax prep. Revive paint easily. Get out there. Get rid of those swirl marks and those minor defects and scratches. Hybrid ceramic trim restorer for the people that have all the plastic that turns white and gray. Bring it back to its beautiful black luster. Restores darkness and shine to the exterior trim. Now, Meguiar's has a hybrid ceramic solution for everyone for incredible water beading and protection, durability beyond traditional wax. It's ceramic made easy with Meguiar's. All right, quick break. Back with Rotten Tomatoes right after this.
Listen to that noise. It's a high falsetto voice that can only mean one thing, and you can feel it.
Got some names of flicks, and the gang makes their picks, guessing if it's rotten or fresh.
If they guess it exactly, we'll get a bonus 5.
It's the Rotten Tomatoes game. You know how we do it. Give me the Rotten Tomatoes game. Now it's time to play it.
Well, it's been a full week since the slap heard around the world dominated every talk show on the planet. But over the years, there have been many shocking Oscar moments.
Oh.
And that's what this week's Rotten Tomatoes game is based on. Let's examine another physical assault that took place on stage during the 2003 television broadcast. Back then, Adrian Brody was nominated for his performance as a Polish-Jewish radio station pianist who gets separated from his family during the Holocaust. And after he won, he grabbed presenter Halle Berry and delivered a surprising, unwanted kiss.
An assault by today's standards.
For sure.
Also controversial, Roman Polanski won an Oscar for directing the film, only he couldn't accept the award in person because he fled the country to avoid a pedophilia conviction. Released in 2002, The Pianist.
This movie fucked me up.
It's not fun.
This
it's not
is
a fun film.
To me, like Schindler's List is the Care Bears movie. This, for some reason, this was so visceral. It really fucked me up.
I realized that this was the kind of movie where I was like, I don't need to go there. Even if it's quality work, I would like to be swept away somewhere happy.
That's my Boys Don't Cry. I don't need to see it. I get it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Also, side info. So in the HBO show, Lakers Winning Time, whatever the fuck it is.
Winning Time.
It's too many shows. He plays Pat Riley.
Oh, Adrian Brody?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's playing Pat Riley.
Yeah, sorry. As the announcer.
And I was well, Chick Hearns is the announcer, and then he got like the Pat Riley. So there's a lot to be learned.
Yeah.
But I looked up Pat Riley. He was a standout basketball player in college. He got drafted by the Dallas Cowboys.
Oh, no shit.
Never played football.
No.
Now the Dallas Cowboys would they drafted Bullet Bob Hayes. He was a sprinter. He was like an Olympic sprinter, and they'd put him. They do a little stunt casting back in the day, and like maybe LeBron James could have been drafted, but the Cowboys had a little more pomp and circumstance or something. They did things a little differently, but I still didn't get the Pat Riley drafted by the Cowboys. Were they serious? Could he have took him up on it?
He's obviously a great athlete. Probably
11th round, 1967, drafted as a wide receiver.
It's pretty late.
It's weird for a guy who played no football.
Yeah.
Well, and are you supposed to be super lanky as a wide receiver?
Back in those days, you could be Fred Bulletnikoff.
Yes, Gina.
Okay. Well,
good
point.
Back in
With
those
his
days,
stick-em. Now you could be whatever size, but I think with him they were early money on the let's get a tall guy just go up there and grab it.
Wow.
All right. So this movie. Okay.
Oh,
Okay. Let's see. Oh boy. All right. The critics liked it.
But do they? Where are the critics on Roman Polanski?
That's actually a good question.
In
especially back
fashion,
then.
out of fashion, yeah. Because I remember there was a shit ton of jokes about him at that Oscars, but people booing the jokes, like really split the room.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, there should be a dip for Polanski, but we don't. The Oscars and Hollywood in general is not really good at that.
That's true.
That's
That's a good point.
They
celebrate it.
Will Smith the fucking standing ovation.
They're probably most. If you talk to most people in the Academy, they probably hate Clint Eastwood more than they hate Roman Polanski.
Oh boy, an indictment.
Controversial.
But let's see. All right, so oh god, about the Polanski, I'm going to give a slight deduction for the Polanski. All right, I'm at 88.
That was a really good movie. I went 97.
Very hard to watch, but 93.
The Pianist is certified fresh at 95%.
Okay.
God damn it. I had 91 and I dropped a couple points because you brought up Roman Polanski. I was like, maybe there's some Christian on there or something who doesn't like his ways.
Audience 96.
Yeah, same.
I mean, it's undeniably good. It's just not fun.
No.
Now let's discuss one of the more shocking wins in Oscar history. During the ceremony honoring films from 1992, the Best Supporting Actress category was stacked with legends, led by Vanessa Redgrave. But the unlikely winner was Marissa Tomei, who played Joe Pesci's fiancée, a mafia-esque car mechanic with a thick Brooklyn accent. It was the film's only nomination, and for years people speculated her name was read by mistake. From 1992, My Cousin Vinny.
That was the rumor for years.
Really?
Because she was the last one, supposedly, front voter, I guess. And they read her name, and for years, it was an accident. But we saw with La La Land and Moonlight, they would have stepped in.
Yeah, somebody would have said something.
And she was legit really good.
But best?
She was very, very good.
It's a fun movie.
She was very, very good.
Is this movie a little overrated?
I think if anything, it's underrated. You know what I mean? Like, it's written off as like so much fluff, but it's actually a very smart, clever, down the middle of the road.
You got Machio.
It gets quoted a lot.
Machio.
Like it's like, oh, he's pulling a My Cousin Vinny.
My biological clock is ticking like this.
Yeah, Utes. What
Utes.
about the Utes?
Two Utes.
Yeah,
Win the lawyer.
Yeah, Herman Munster.
You know, when you
Right.
say, comedies don't get their due, this would be a good example. Like, this is a fun movie. This is a good movie. And just because it's a comedy doesn't make it less worthy.
But I feel like this has got its due in that everyone knows the name of it and people repeat little phrases from it. And it's also used as sort of like gaslight the movie, or is now you gaslit, like people
That's
go, he's
true.
going Cousin
That's
Vinny
true.
on his ass or whatever. So it's in the zeitgeist. It's out there.
Well, and would it be anything without Joe Pesci?
Right.
Because
so
it's Joe Pesci's movie.
we don't like comedies, but this one was funny. But how funny was it? I've seen like half of it in bits and pieces and stuff.
Oh, it's
and
a smart comedy. For the era, this is one of the better, like, middle of the road comedies.
Fish out of water.
all right.
Hold on, I gotta think.
Okay.
Is it fresh? Okay.
All right. 77.
A little higher, 81.
Adam got in my head. Still fresh, but at 69.
My cousin Vinny is certified fresh at 87%.
Wow.
Just 87 with the audience.
Wow.
This is a really fun movie.
Yeah.
You'd appreciate it, like defending your life in a sense that it's a smart, exactly what it should be comedy.
Well, when the audience score and the tomato meter are the same, you can't argue with that.
Sure, we're all familiar with Marlon Brando not accepting his award for Best Actor, but he wasn't the first to do so. 2 years earlier, legendary actor George C. Scott told the Academy he would reject any nomination he might receive because he didn't like the idea of creative performances being compared. Still, they gave him the Oscar for his sympathetic, unflinching portrayal of World War II General Patton. George stayed home in New York while a producer accepted the award on his behalf from 1970, Patton.
Rommel, you magnificent bastard!
I don't know where to stand on this one because this was it during Vietnam. Obviously, the military was not looked at that fondly by Hollywood, and this is glorifying, this semi-controversial figure.
Trying to think if it was all in the performance. Like, was the movie's good? Starts off in that weird way of him walking in front of that huge American flag.
Crap through a goose.
Yeah, like it was he was amazing in it, but is his performance amazing and then the movie's not that well regarded? But Bryan's right in the thick of the Vietnam and anti-military and blah, blah, blah.
One of the most famous slaps in movie history when he slapped the shit out of the soldier who had, at the time, we didn't know PTSD, but shell shock. I can't go with this, hurts my nerves. You get out of here and make room for a real soldier.
Right. Yeah, all this stuff I feel like critics wouldn't like.
But, this is a terrible comparison, but are we talking about Patton in this movie as sort of an Archie Bunker character? Like, he's not necessarily heroic.
An anti-hero of the 70s, yes.
Yeah, I think Patton died in a Jeep accident.
Oh, boy.
After all the bombs and all the theaters.
In San Diego?
Yeah, he was partying with some strippers. All right, let's see. But it's a good movie. It's
considered a classic. I don't know what the score is.
Isn't a good movie. All right. We good? I say 82.
Right there at 84.
90.
Rommel, you magnificent bastard. I read you book.
Patton is certified fresh at 94%.
These movies are just right on with the people and the critics.
93 at the people. Bryan got my head with the Vietnam thing. I was like, we really, boy, you guys aren't old enough, but we hated the military. You couldn't even get a short haircut because you'd be mistaken for somebody in the military.
All right, in 1974, American photographer and gay rights activist Robert Opel shocked the world by storming the Oscars stage completely naked.
A streaker.
He reportedly snuck backstage by pretending to be a journalist before stripping down and running naked past David Niven, who was introducing Elizabeth Taylor.
Wow.
Elizabeth
had a great line.
Went on to present the award for Best Picture, which was awarded to this con men dramedy. Reuniting Paul Newman and Robert Redford on a personal note, this is my favorite movie of all time. It gave us such lines as, Luther said I could learn a lot from you. I already know how to drink. And, sorry I'm late, guys. I was taking a crap. From 1973, The Sting.
I hope they'll remember Soy Bomb guy?
Yeah, that's who I was thinking of.
But then I realized there was a streaker.
Niven,
All right.
do you remember Niven's comeback? Not comeback, but his quip.
No.
It was legendary. It was something along the lines of you can quote it for sure, but it's like that's the first time that man will be known for his shortcomings.
Oh, right.
Or say that dry British, wit.
All right. Well, Robert Shaw's great in this. It's a great movie. Tried to watch it with Sonny a few months back.
I thought he would have liked this.
Couldn't hang.
I will say, by today's twist standards, it's fairly pedestrian. For the time, it blew people's fucking minds, and it's a great movie. But by the twists,
The Departed.
the game has been upped.
Right.
Well, look, the only way I'm in this game is if I get my 5-point deduction and you two are good 13 points off. That's the only way.
One more movie after this.
This is going to work. Oh, do we?
Yeah, that's number 4.
Oh, I'm looking at
How many scores got written down?
Oh, yeah. You know what? I scribbled out my first one as if it was the one I use, and I just downgraded. All right. I am locked in at 96%.
I was going to go 99, but Dawson puts it over the edge to 100.
Oh, shit. Going to Toy Story
Perfect score.
Village. I said 95.
Always drink gin with a mark, kid. He can't tell if you cut it. The Sting is certified fresh at 94%.
Oh.
Shit.
And the people at 95. So the trend continues. So here's David Nivens.
But isn't it fascinating to think that probably the only laugh that man will ever get in his life is by stripping off and showing his shortcomings.
And the crowd goes wild.
Crowd goes wild.
Is that Father Guido Sarducci?
No. I don't know who that is in the crowd.
Bobby Hollander.
It could be Jim Croce. Like everyone just had a big fat mustache and
He looks like he's in disguise.
and a weird
Big
weird
mustache,
70s
glasses.
Jufro comb over.
The wife from Jaws is right behind him.
Oh, wow.
All right. That's the wife from Jaws.
What was
God.
your score on the last one?
95.
Not a lot of diversity in the crowd back
That's
then.
not Linda Blair, the little girl, is it?
Could be, yes. I think that little girl is Linda
Okay.
Blair. So we're just looking at the footage.
Just a screenshot.
All right, last one.
Okay, finally, we all remember just a few short years ago when Kimmel hosted, and the Best Picture Oscar winners were completely mixed up. First, the musical La La Land was named the winner. But after the pandemonium settled, it was revealed that, in fact, Moonlight was the true Best Picture. Well, to win this week's game, it seems only fair that you should have to guess both scores.
Oh.
From 2016, La La Land and Moonlight.
This actually benefits me because I think I'm in third place.
This is interesting because after the biggest debacle ever, does anyone ever say, oh, you have to see La La Land, you have to see Moonlight? No. Moonlight's never been spoken of again.
I've never even seen it pop up on cable. I mean, not that it hasn't, but what I'm saying is usually when you win Best Picture,
Right.
you get a run.
Yeah.
I've not seen it. Moonlight was, an interesting study, pretty depressing, and didn't feel like Best Picture material at all to me. La La Land had a lot of that in it, but, was missing a certain gravitas.
It was like an ode to Busby Berkeley, but how many of us care?
It was fine.
Yeah.
It was fun to watch. Everyone's beautiful and pretty. And it was really the antithesis of Moonlight.
Yes,
These are two movies that
exactly
were
opposite.
further apart. And you could argue that Moonlight winning, when historians look at the Oscars, this is when we changed directions and got away from big, colorful, happy, positive, whatever, into this direction.
Hold on.
So I'm going to work in my cultural bump and shave because Moonlight's it's fine. It's okay. It's not, you don't need to see it, but it's definitely got some points because it was black, because it was gay. So I'm going to say that. Maybe I'll deduct a couple points from La La Land. And okay, you guys ready?
Mm-hmm.
I go Moonlight. Oh wait, sorry. We going La La Land
I
first?
did La La first.
La La 77 and Moonlight 91.
Ooh.
86 and 96.
I feel like I have a lead to protect. I don't know if this is going to work out for me. La La Land 78, Moonlight 83.
La La Land. Certified fresh. 91%.
Oh, shit.
Feeling good.
Moonlight. Certified fresh. 98%.
Well, I hate everybody because I'm pretty sure I had it secured until now.
This feels good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so
They're going to have some good scores in this game.
I know La La Land with the audience 81 versus 91 tomato meter, and then here's where the cultural drop comes in 98 with the critics, and with the audience on Moonlight it is 79.
98% fresh with Moonlight.
It's not that good a film.
I've seen it.
It's critic proof.
It's
This
a
is
subject matter
crazy.
film. It's not a good, again, we can't just, look, sorry. We can't choose a vice president based on her skin tone, and we can't decide which movie's the best based on skin tone.
We did both.
I know, it fucks everything up.
Yeah.
But all right.
All right, Gina Grad, congratulations. You made the podium. Adam Carolla, you also made the podium.
Yeah.
Bald Bryan's got a score of 31.
Holy shit.
Whoa.
Adam Carolla, 52.
Jesus.
Gina Grad.
31 was mine?
Yeah.
Gina Grad played a strong game throughout
Yeah.
and might have kept the win, but you did it a different way. You got 44. Bald Bryan wins.
Wow.
Bald
Equally
Bryan.
stepping down.
Dawson took great joy in saying my score 3 times slowly last week. I'd love to just get a couple more slowly at the 31. Just let it wash over me.
I feel like the time has passed.
Son of a bitch.
31.
Oh.
It's the Rotten Tomatoes game. You know how we do it.
With an extra movie.
Fred Armisen. Right. Oh, that's true. Yeah. Fred Armisen.
Didn't make a difference.
He's the Indian chief who got a broken dream catcher.
For crank yankers.
For crank yankers, and it's screwing his nights up. But listen to how subtle he is about it. That's the beauty of Fred. All right.
I love that he's reading a magazine with an animal's butt. It says, ass and you shall receive.
But see, he didn't go over the top with it. Very, very subdued. All right, let me tell you about LifeLock. Tax season is always crazy, but it can feel even more stressful if you fall victim to fake IRS calls. Be smart and just hang up. The IRS usually contacts taxpayers through the mail, not over the phone. Every day we put our info at risk on the internet. In an instant, cyber criminals could harm your finances and your credit. Good thing there's LifeLock. LifeLock helps detect a wide range of identity threats, like your social security number for sale on the dark web. If they detect your information has potentially been compromised, they will send you an alert. You'll have access to a dedicated restoration specialist if you become a victim, so protect yourself with LifeLock, right, Dawson?
No one can prevent all identity theft or monitor all transactions at all businesses, but you can keep what's yours with LifeLock by Norton. Join now and save up to 25% off your first year with promo code ADAM. Call 1-800-LifeLock or head to lifelock.com. Use promo code ADAM for 25% off.
Chris says Armisen not credited in that episode.
Yeah, it didn't sound like him to me either. But I mean, I obviously trust your memory, but I was confused. So
is it Hank Azaria?
Yeah.
Maybe it was.
It sounded a lot more like Hank Azaria.
Boy, do I have egg on my face. That was Hank Azaria.
Yeah.
Fred Stoller did one for us. Jack Osborne. God, I'm looking. Wanda Sykes, Kevin and Katie Kimmel, Jimmy's kids did that episode. You know what? Then you're right. It's Hank Azaria, another amazing, sort of appreciated, crazy comedic talent, voice guy.
The fact that he's not a household name is crazy.
And talk about underappreciated, no longer Apu.
I know. Yeah.
Now
so
we've only got 88 Simpsons characters.
Right.
Yeah. So Fred must have done Chip, the Hispanic.
The Mexican immigrant.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm wrong. Sorry. See what memory does. All right, we'll take a quick break. We'll be right back to the news right after this.
A couple of updates as things start to come out that frankly contradict each other about the big slap. And by the way, I'm just seeing now who's someone I assume you love. I actually do love Fran Lebowitz commenting on it, but she does have a great quote here that I'll read at the end. Anyway, let's get into some of it. You know, we talked last week about Chris Rock's ticket prices for the Wilbur shows just soaring. Well, everybody wanted to hear what he had to say. You know, my least favorite phrase on the planet, Bryan hates unearthed, I hate breaking your silence. This is, people wanted Chris to break his silence.
Disqualified.
This is how you use it. So he didn't really get into it, but he did acknowledge it. Somebody, and it sounds like iPhone footage, so you're really going to kind of have to listen. I guess gave this to Vanity Fair because Vanity Fair posted this on Twitter. This was the very opening of, I think, the first night of the Wilbur shows.
I don't have like a bunch of shit about what happened. So if you came to hear that, I had like a whole show I wrote before this weekend. thing, what happened,
All right, we get it. It doesn't seem that intriguing to me to hear what he has to say about it, but I get everyone's talking about it.
I want to hear what Jada has to say about it.
I would be more interested
Yes.
in what she had to say about it.
And then people did start publications started posting sort of the back of her head of her kind of like smiling and laughing during the whole thing. So whatever. I'd love to. I can't wait for the red table talk on that.
There was a, I don't know, TMZ or something had some back angle
Yes.
of her like laughing after Will hit
Yeah.
him or slapped him.
So meanwhile, Oscars producer Will Packer spoke with Good Morning America on Friday and provided a few more details, but again, some contradict others. Packer says he initially thought that they were doing a bit, but understood it was real once Will started screaming at him. Packer met Rock backstage immediately after the incident and said Rock was still in joke mode, but was clearly in shock. He says he asked him if Smith really hit him, and Rock responded, "I just took a punch from Muhammad Ali." Packer says he and Rock spoke with LAPD, who said they could arrest Smith for battery if Rock wanted to press charges, but the comedian was dismissive, said, "No, I'm fine." Packer added that Smith was going to be forcibly removed from the show before the Best Actor award was given out, but he told the Academy leadership that he should be allowed to stay because Chris Rock said it was okay. In an update about pending disciplinary action against Smith, the Academy said Smith refused to leave the Dolby Theater, and that now the Academy is investigating it and could suspend him or expulsion or other sanctions for his actions.
I'm confused that in this modern era, we can't figure out whether somebody approached from the theater, from security, Will Smith during a commercial break and asked him to leave or not.
Right.
Does that seem pretty knowable?
Yeah, and I imagine there was a lot of cell phone footage from people on the upper deck.
Everybody had to be doing something. Now, maybe they zipped them in a bag and they didn't let you have them, but they did the same thing with Chris Rock's show at the Wilbur, and somebody got something.
Maybe you're right about the hoi polloi, the upstairs people, but I saw in the background of many shots, celebrities at least, on their phones. So.
Well, and there was a shot from
Will
the balcony.
Will Smith tweeted like 10 minutes after it.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's shots from the balcony, badly stated, but of Denzel and Tyler Perry talking to Will Smith, and they're trying. So there's people in the peanut gallery, trying to figure out who he's talking to.
Well, I will say this that will probably add to the confusion, which is, from what I remember from the Oscars, everyone dresses in a tuxedo. Mm-hmm. So I think security's like in a tuxedo. They don't look like bank guards.
Right.
You know what I mean? So you wouldn't see
They're not
somebody
windbreakers.
with a marked outfit walking up.
Right.
You'd see somebody in a tuxedo.
Is that Mel Gibson? No, it's security.
Right. But this is great. Comedian Marlon Wayans shared an old video of his brother Sean Wayans doing his Chris Rock impression on the 2000 MTV Music Video Awards. Were you there?
2000?
Yeah.
Probably.
It is so good. It's like 3 minutes, so I just cut it down to like 40 seconds. It's so good. He's impersonating Chris Rock, insults everybody. Of course, Will Smith laughing at all the jokes. Here's a clip.
Britney Spears got her new album out, her new song. Oops, I did it again. Oops, she did it again. She did it again, y'all. What the did you do the first time?
Brittany, not loving it.
Not loving it.
There's another couple good ones.
Eve here. Oh, my bad. That's Cisco.
Long song.
We got a little bit of Destiny's Child here tonight. That's right. Got the new hit song. Say my name, say my name. What name? Every time I learn the name, you kick the out the group. I say your name. How about temporary?
It's amazing.
It's also kind of sad that he could actually just do his act, or an act that's equal to his act.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, it's sort of, it's like when we were was talking to Yardley Smith, and she was telling me that famous Michael Jackson Simpsons episode had he did he did all the dialogue, but he couldn't sing the song because contractually, whatever. And so a guy came in and sung the Happy Birthday as Michael Jackson.
Happy birthday, Lisa.
Yeah. But it was like, it's kind of as good as Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
All about it.
Well, that's lore. Was it ever really Michael Jackson? And then something about he wasn't credited in the credits of that episode.
Right. But then Kip Lennon is his name. And he's now with Ambrosia. The band. But
makes sense.
Might this be, I'm always kind of sitting around thinking, it's like, why do we love sports so much? Why do we love sports? Now, we love sports because it's a meritocracy. All the rich, white-ass owners of every NFL team and all their kids and they love football. They've all played, many have played a lot of college ball, never started for their team. Mm-hmm. What kind of merit? Even some of these owners arguably had kids that did okay in college, maybe started in a decent program, still not good enough to make my team that I own. Yep. And that's what we love about it. Yeah. Now in a world where it's like, we need a diverse this, we need a diverse that, we look at everyone and go, does he really belong there? Or is that really just because he said he was transitioning or whatever? It fucks everything up. But here's the reason we love sports. When the Wayans brothers can go up there and do Chris Rock and actually be every bit as funny as Chris Rock, it sounds exactly like him, so on and so forth. I mean, Chris is great, but you can simulate it.
No. Well, credit to them, they're funny. They can
not everyone can do it, but they can do it. And then the skinny white guy can do the Michael Jackson voice, and he did it in front of Michael Jackson, by the way, who was at the table reading, whatever. He can do it. Who gets to simulate Michael Jordan? Who gets to simulate Kobe?
Yeah.
Who gets to simulate that? You know what I mean? It can't be done. Now they could have an actor play Magic Johnson, but they got a
lot of cutaways.
You can't even pretend to do it.
Yeah. Good point.
Sorry.
Well, I'm glad you brought up football. Let's talk about some tweaks to the Rooney Rule, which now is part of our lexicon. There's no reason I should know what it is, but yet we all know what it is now. They're tweaking the Rooney Rule in the wake of the former Dolphins coach Brian Flores suing the league over issues regarding race. Interviewing a woman for a coaching or front office position will now count toward Rooney Rule fulfillment, and interviews with women and minorities must take place in person to qualify, so no more the phone. Also, every team must hire a minority offensive assistant coach for the 2022 season.
That's the one that seemed like a tough one for me. The tough one for them to pull off. You have to have a minority assistant offensive. They say offensive.
Sorry, I missed that last part.
Minority offensive assistant coach
or woman.
Yeah, but
that now counts as a minority. Yes,
25 offensive coaches. You know what I mean? Line coach, interior line coach, extra.
They'll break it off into something smaller.
Receivers coach, tight ends coach.
Okay, right.
I feel like it's doable.
Okay.
That shouldn't be a high bar.
Right. Well, we didn't talk about the Razzies, my God. And I'm glad we're bringing them up now because there has been a Razzie rescinded, which they've only done one other time. And I'll share that with you, too. The Razzie Award.
The performance got better.
Well, sort of the opposite. The Razzie Awards have rescinded
Bruce Willis,
the worst performance by Bruce Willis in 2021. In a statement, co-founders John Wilson and Mo Murphy said they made the decision due to his recently disclosed diagnosis of aphasia. The actor's been diagnosed, we talked about it, with this cognitive disorder and announced that he's stepping away from acting. Have you talked to Dr. Drew about this at all?
Yes, I did.
Any thoughts? I'm very curious.
I made notes.
Oh.
So good news.
The end.
Anyway.
First off, aphasia doesn't mean that much. Like aphasia is not a joke. It's like a symptom. Or sorry, it's not
of a head trauma.
Yes,
or tumor.
Well, so here's how it works. Aphasia is not a specific clinical condition or diagnosis. It's like what Dr. Drew said. It's like saying I have a fever. And then you go, okay, what brought on this fever? There's a bunch of other things that could bring it on. But he basically said it's a big deal. You know, the head trauma and the other, stroke. It's early onset dementia is pretty much what it is.
And, it's not reversible, I would imagine.
It's very serious. It doesn't seem reversible, and it's just basically early onset dementia.
Okay.
But aphasia is like saying I have a fever.
It's a symptom of,
Right.
Well, it's very, very sad, but they did the right thing. I know it might sound like kind of a reach, but Bryan, I just want you to take a guess throughout the big, big blockbuster movies of history, who you think they've rescinded the other, and I'll give you a hint, only other Razzie for. It's a female from an iconic movie in, I think, technically the 70s.
Oh, God.
I'm putting a lot of pressure on you. Oh, no. But I think it'll make sense when I tell you. They rescinded Shelley Duvall for worst actress in The Shining after it came out how tortured she was by Stanley Kubrick and how he fucked her up so bad during the filming that they just wanted to leave her alone after that.
From mental illness these days.
Yeah.
I thought she would have got it for Popeye. I didn't know.
She wasn't bad in The Shining. I mean, she wasn't, it's
they gave
not
it to
celebrated.
Well, didn't Stephen King say I'm generalizing, but that movie was a mockery. That's not what I wrote.
Yeah,
so maybe that's where that was coming from.
He didn't like it.
She was supposed to be a stronger character.
Well, first, I thought I liked the idea that she was just so sort of odd and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It struck me as real.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? We do things where we hook them up with somebody's a little
Sybil Shepherd. It wouldn't have made sense.
Right.
Well, also what we do is he's a struggling author. They live in a small apartment, blah, blah, blah. Where did he pull this hot chick from? Yeah. You know what I mean? Now we're going, well, that's Jack, but not in the movie. It's not Jack. But so it's
actually,
Johnny.
Actually, he is.
Is he?
No, Jack Torrance.
Oh, you're right.
Makes Jack a dull boy.
Oh, that's right. Here's Johnny. So I like that she was sort of odd and they seemed like a weird and her mannerisms or whatever, but I found her perfectly believable and sort of interesting in that role.
From what I remember, I think Stephen King shit on it because he wanted a stronger female presence and she just, screamed it and ran away from everything. So whatever.
It turned out well. I would say probably the best. Certainly the best up to a certain point. I mean, there's been some better Stephen King movies in the last couple decades, but for a while, there are a lot of stinkers.
Yeah.
I love The Shining.
Same. I actually watched it recently. So we didn't really talk about this at the top of the show. I thought this was where you were going. The State Department marked Transgender Day of Visibility Friday by offering the chance to get a passport in a new way. Previously, trans men and women would have to present medical evidence of surgeries in order to change the gender marker. But as of April 11th, coming up, there will be another option, an X, like Adam has on his license.
Not an X Carolla.
For those who choose not to identify as male or female. The rule also applies to people who are non-binary or intersexed. That's a thing, by the way. That's
intersex?
Isn't that when you have the both?
Genitalia?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is all dogs on a fucking airplane, which is there's a very small group of the populace who actually needs to travel with their dog. Yeah. And then there's every fucking 15-year-old TikToker's heads being fucking poisoned who thinks this would be a cool idea to do. So I got the X on my my driver's license. I don't want to be a hypocrite. But
you're a champion.
You're benefiting.
A vanguard.
I was urged on by my young transitioning son at the DMV.
Solidarity.
This should be a funny goof. But can you imagine going to the DMV with your dad when you're a kid and go, hey, man, let's make some alterations here. It'll be funny. My dad would have hit me with a shoe.
Let's have a laugh.
But I would argue, though, at a certain point, you have to go, why do we have passports? And the ultimate, why do we have a passport is to make sure this person is this person. I mean, the ultimate non-passport is you just go, yeah, my name is Butch Johnson, so what of it? You know what I mean? You walk past the person. So now we drill down and we go, well, what is your height? What is your weight? What gender, eye color? So I would say imagining or reimagining or living your life to your fullest of your inner whatever, it's all good. But when it comes to the international travel probably best to pick a lane.
Yeah.
And then I'm not so sure other countries are so down with all this shit, because remember, you're not using a passport to get from here to Indiana.
Right.
You may go into Dubai.
I was just going to
And
say.
the good folks of Dubai may not be
friendly.
down with our crazy fucking progressive shit that we're doing here. So you may have some trouble in Dubai. Dawson's nodding his head.
Yeah, I was just going to say Uganda, probably the same thing.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well, the new rule also eliminates the intimate physical pat down that TSA has traditionally performed when somebody's appearance doesn't match their gender. So now it's just you say it and and that's all good.
Well, that's safe.
Look,
Safety first.
Can I brought this up a few times, but look, women pay, a considerably less amount for their auto insurance. Aren't we kind of at the point where I get to switch over and save a bundle?
That's a good point.
Want to get rid of my junk?
Discount double check.
Yes, I
Down
mean,
here.
Can I just kind of go, look, I'm a woman. If it works for the bathroom's got to work for State Farm, right? And I'd like a little break on my driving here.
Speaking of that, I didn't know that this really did cross over because it crossed over to security. It also crosses over to medical stuff because I just got my pre-op, not that pre-op, but my pre-op blood work done. And I was going through like the Quest stuff.
Finally getting rid of the dick.
That's right. And they tell you what everything is. And one of the tests is called, I didn't look it up beforehand, but it's called like, non-African American something, like it's a, I don't know, whatever it is.
Test results.
Yeah, and I put it, I clicked on information and it says like this is, for people who identify as African American, you must add 2.1% to the total. Identify as African American.
Wow.
It's a higher count of something.
Right, but for medical blood work.
Yeah, well, look, we are crossing into this place very quickly. I was around the whole time. Look, the world according to GARP. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. John Lithgow.
Transsexual, the transvestite,
I was just thinking
whatever.
about transvestite last night. Not a lot of transvestite talking.
No, that's not an appropriate word.
It was just a thing. It was
From
around.
Transsexual Transylvania.
It was weird, but it was there, and people kind of got on with it. And then, it started to kind of permeate the culture. And then all of a sudden, we decided that this was, well, basically what Judd Apatow did with Pete Davidson. Somehow we decided we needed this all the time. Like, come on, Pete Davidson, what are you doing now? We're like, I was all right with my sprinkling of Pete Davidson, but now we decided, like, this is a thing and we have to do it. And then politicians and a lot of pundits and things like that, they just go, what's everyone talking about? All right, here we go. And now here we go. But no free lunches in nature, and there shall be something will happen based on it. Or there will be, you will go, and look, it's essentially, it's like shutting down schools seems like a good idea. Check with me in 5 years to see if there was a part 2 of this, and us sprinting toward this sort of transgender world. I mean, you're feeling it a little bit now with the swimmer beating all the ladies in the pool and getting the NCAA championship. Like that's part 2.
You know what's interesting, though? I was thinking about this the other day, and I don't remember when you said it, maybe a year ago, 2 years ago, but I remember you saying, you were balancing like some 2 opposing ideas that you switched what you thought of them. And I remember the examples you gave for abortion and transitioning. And I thought that was really interesting. That always kind of stuck with me. And I'm wondering if you still have the same feelings about transitioning.
Well,
now.
It's dogs on a plane, which is if you have a legitimate problem with your sight or something like that, by all means, you should be able to travel with your dog. But you want to transition. You want to announce you're a chick when you got a dude beard and then walk into the ladies' locker room over at the Wii Spa. That's the nut job traveling with the dog they want to travel with that doesn't actually. Yes. And unfortunately, there's way more of them than there are actually. Just look at the dog ratio at LAX. For every one legitimate blind person with a legitimate service dog, there was 128 nutty broads and their fucking chihuahuas. So keep in mind that will be it. Transition. Fine. Transition.
Have at it.
Announcing that you've transitioned and I want to stay in the ladies' side of the youth hostel. That's there's going to be a part 2 of that. All right, let's bring it home, Gina Grad.
You got it. I'm Gina Grad, and that's the news. You're a white lady, so shut up and stay in your lane.
Gina Grad. That was the news with Gina Grad.
Indianapolis, Indiana. That's going to be us at Helium. Do some live pods there. May 6th and 7th, and stand-up shows there. And then Huntington Beach. Sea Legs will all be out there. That's a fun place. Big outdoor venue. Live podcast there May 20th. Coming to Denver. Probably have Sonny with me on that trip. You can come out and say hi. Just go to adamcarolla.com for all the live shows. And you can pre-order my book, Everything Reminds Me of Something. It's available for pre-order as we speak. It'll come out July 19th. And Judd Apatow's got the books, got the movies, got the Carlin doc coming out soon. The man never stops cranking it out. Until next time, Sam McCrow, Gina Grad, and Bryan, and Judd Apatow saying mahalo.
He had experimented with but never finished it. Second City in Chicago about a guy at a poker game and everyone trades sex stories. And he clearly is making his up. And so he's talking
feel like
about
a bag of sand.
Yeah. The weird one was that, and you put your hand down a girl's pants, you know how it smells like baby powder? That was the one that so he pitched that to me, and I said, well, if you did that really real and human, it would be very funny.